Okay, today is Friday, October 17th, 2014, and we are interviewing Mr. Enoch Anderson at the Illinois State Library in Springfield, Illinois. Mr. Anderson is 86 years old, having been born on July 2nd, 1928. My name is Joanne Jennings, and I'll be your interviewer today. Please state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in.
I served in Korea in the U.S. Army.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was born at Chandlerville, Illinois.
And tell me a little bit about your family growing up, your parents, do you have siblings?
I'm from a family of 7 kids. I was the middle one. We lived on a farm and did those usual things that farmers' children do.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a real pioneer lady. She could do anything from, darning your socks to, and incidentally, she didn't darn them. She crocheted the holes closed.
Okay.
And with 7 kids, she had plenty of that to do. Yes. Went to a one-room schoolhouse, Morgan School, which is now torn down and destroyed.
Right.
All 8 grades there, and then went to Chandlerville High School for 4 years. Okay.
Were any of your siblings or in the military? Any of them?
My brother, who is older than I am, served when they occupied Japan after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So he spent, he finished his enlistment and re-enlisted, so he spent quite a bit of time in around Tokyo.
Okay. How old were you when you enlisted?
I was drafted.
You were drafted, excuse me.
Yeah, and
excuse me.
I was 22, I believe.
22.
Yeah.
What were you doing before you were drafted?
I worked for Alice Chalmers Manufacturing Company in Springfield, Illinois, as a materials control clerk. So.
And what dates did you serve?
From November 20th, 1950 to August, I think, 24th, 1952.
And can you tell me a little bit about when you very first entered the military, your training, and what it was like?
Okay. Well, I think I speak for most of us who went into the service. It was sort of like going to the dentist. It was one of those things that you had to do and you wanted to get it over with. You didn't really know why you went, or it was not an important thing to you. You went just because it was a patriotic duty. Went through training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, heavy weapons infantry training, and after getting out of the boot training, went to Seattle, or went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and from there was sent to Korea.
Okay. So you served in Korea, and what was your job or assignment?
I was a radio operator, an infantry radio operator. When I went, they had just finished with the sad part of the Korean War, where most of the division that I was assigned to was wiped out. And they realized, I suppose, the importance of communication. And so, having a shortage of radio operators, the division started a radio school. And I was in the first class. We were supposed to, in 6 weeks, learn Morse code at the speed of 18 words a minute. And it's a course that was given in the United States, a 16-week course. They had assigned double the number that they needed because they were planned on half of the class flunking out. And I managed to get through the 6 weeks, and after that was assigned to my company.
Okay. Do you remember like how you felt when you first, your emotions and everything when you first arrived? What was it like?
Well, in those times, I think most of us didn't really know why we were there. We didn't, not that the Army did not try to inform us, but there were other important things on our minds. And so it wasn't a matter of being over there to, protect those people from being swallowed up in some other philosophy. Of course, we knew that we were supposed to say that we were there to promote democracy and freedom and all that sort of thing. But those things were really not the foremost things in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
It was a matter of what you needed to do to be a citizen of the United States. We knew that we had an obligation to our country, and we tried to fulfill it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how long were you there in Korea?
From about January of 1951 to about January of 1952. After I got out of radio school, I was sent to the division headquarters of the 38th Infantry Regiment. And our duties there was to communicate with all the other regiments in our section. We went on patrols, set up observation posts for the company, the regimental commander, and many times we were left on our own. We were taken when the colonel decided to leave in the afternoon. He would leave us there, and often there would only be a couple of us, and we were, so to speak, had a ringside seat to what was going on. Mm-hmm. Often the infantry was working on the next hill, and we were watching them. One of the most impressive things that we saw was the use of napalm, when there would be liquid fire running down a hill. And it was very, very impressive. At that time, we were not worried about dying. Mm-hmm. And it was almost hilarious to see when the colonel was there and a round would come in and he would have to duck and go to the ground. We would stand back and sort of get a laugh out of it.
So what was the climate there? And
the climate there was basically, during the summertime, was about the same as it was here in central Illinois. The winters were very, very cold. I can remember after I served several months with regimental headquarters, I was sent back to the radio school that I went to as an instructor. And so I spent 2 or 3 months there, kind of having been there before. They let me kind of be the administrator of the school. And I spent lots of hours with kids who were really, really interested in not being assigned to a rifle company, but as a radio operator. It was a step up. And so they were very, very interested in doing well.
Mhm.
And so after hours, often we spent, lots of extra hours letting them practice.
Mhm.
And it was really quite rewarding to see them
Mhm.
succeed.
And you were, what, 22 this time? Is that when
Well,
you,
yeah, about 22, 23 at the time, yes.
what rank did you attain when you were in the
Sergeant.
sergeant?
Mhm. I never knew, uh, from one grade to or one rank to the next. Uh, I never ever bothered about, unless I was forced to, putting my rank on my shoulder uh, until I was promoted to sergeant. And I was at the radio school before I attained the rank of sergeant. Uh, it did give you more responsibility, and it did open some doors for you, but it also meant that you had bigger responsibility.
Mhm. How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Uh, I wrote letters quite often. Uh, when there was anything at all significant that went on, there were times when the news reports of our division were not good. Uh, although the very serious and well, serious fighting was over, I was there for the well-known Bloody Ridge and Heartbreak Hill and the Punch Bowl.
Now, were you
excursion.
right there in the battle? Were you?
Yes, I was there. Probably although it didn't bother us at the time, probably the most dangerous and scariest situation. But as I say, at the time it was not scary. It's only scary now when I am back home. I realize the danger that I was in. Uh, when we would set up an observation post for the colonel, of course, come sundown, he was out of there. And sometimes there would only be a couple of persons there. We were to keep communications with regimental headquarters. If the phone lines were in operation, we could contact them by phone. If not, we had to fire up our hand generator and uh, hourly report in to them. The thing was, since the Chinese sent out patrols, often our telephone lines would be cut
Mhm.
between us and headquarters. And we realized then that, here we are, two people, nobody to watch over us. And these patrols, when you realize that you could have been taken prisoner, dying was not the worst thing. Being taken prisoner would have been the far worse situation. And when I think back now of those times when it wasn't dying that you were concerned about. It was, although at the time you didn't even think of those things.
Mhm.
But I realize now, oh my golly, that would have been a fate worse than death.
Did any in your unit, were any of them taken prisoner?
No.
Any of them casualties?
Well, yes, we did have casualties. And, you think of the worst times. Well, when your unit was trying to take the next hill and you had to keep in contact with the company that was trying to go up the hill, and you had to sit there in the rain in a foxhole trying to keep your equipment dry so that you could communicate. uh, you didn't get much sleep.
Did you have it? So you slept in a foxhole? You had a
Oh yes.
tent or
No,
no?
you were subjected to the elements, but in those days, you were young, resilient. those things were inconvenient and miserable, but you were able to handle it.
What did you have as far as food?
When we were on the outpost, we had what we call K rations, and in lulls between, the fighting that went on, you had time to prepare. They weren't all that bad, and you got very ingenious about how to prepare them to make them more palatable.
Were you ever able to call home? I know you said you
Oh
wrote.
no! In those days, there
Did
were
you receive
no.
correspondence? You didn't receive any
Well,
letters?
letters, but that's the best correspondence we had.
Okay. Did you receive any medals or citations?
Yes, there's a whole list of things. Probably the most noteworthy recognitions I got was the Combat Infantryman's Badge, which, well, just briefly speaking, it means that you were under fire from the enemy and you exchanged fire with them. And although our unit received the Presidential Unit Citation, and then a unit citation from the President of Korea. Then, of course, the UN Service Medal and the Korean Service Medal. Those things were.
Did you have others listed there that you
I think that's everything that I had listed there.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think I might have been eligible for the Good Conduct Medal, but it never was officially presented. No.
I believe you. Okay. Tell me about some of the friendships you formed.
I have lost contact with almost all the people that I served with. One of my friends that we were issued half a pumpkin, and so you always had a buddy who had the other half, and he and I shared, and somewhere or other we found a couple of others, and we had a real mansion. And the radios sometimes did not totally use up the power in their batteries, and we found a way to have our own electrical light and so forth. Having been kind of subjected to this technology as it was known in those days, we, of course, we had to be very careful with that, because, one of the messages I remember that I had to send was to all the other units to be sure that they put out all fires and lights at night, because the lines were going to be strafed. And so if they saw lights, it would mean it was probably the enemy. And so we had to be sure that we didn't have any lights on at times.
So the other men that you served with?
I've just lost contact with them.
Where were they from?
Well, I went in with a group from Sangamon County, and we went through basic training with them. When I went to, when they sent us to Fort Lewis, Washington, one of my friends from Pleasant Plains, who turned out later to be my brother-in-law, we, for some reason or other, most of the people who were in our basic training group was sent by boat, and we were left there at Fort Lewis. And they came around one day and said, we have the possibility of sending you to Japan by air if you would like to volunteer to go. And so, hey, this is better than having to go by boat. And so they loaded us on a plane, took us up to Anchorage, then we went to the Aleutians of Shemya, and then on to Tokyo. And we caught up with the rest of our basic training group who had already gone by boat.
Can you share some of your most memorable experiences?
You think of some of the more humorous ones. We don't often dwell on those bad ones. Well, of course, one of the vivid memories was when I left the radio school to come home. The train ride was very, very cold and very uncomfortable. From the middle of Korea to the coast to get on the ship to go to Japan, and it was truly a miserable time. But you could endure it because you were on your way home.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Did you have like all the supplies that you felt you needed as far as the warm clothing? And
yes, I was fortunate in that the coldest part of the winter was when I was sent back to be an instructor in the radio school. And yes, we had heat in the tent, and my family was very, very supportive. I told them that I needed an electric blanket, and they sent me an electric blanket, and I was able to get it in my sleeping bag. And we had at Division Rear, where the radio school was, we had electricity, and so I slept quite warmly there.
Yes, you did. Any other memorable experiences you'd like to share?
Well,
Tell her about it. Tell her about your Cape Mary sent you.
oh,
That was that,
you know, at Christmas time, of course, everybody loved when anyone received a package because we would always share. And my sister baked applesauce cake, and everybody was looking forward to it, but the heat got to it and it was spoiled.
Aww.
And so it was a real letdown.
How long did it take for mail to arrive?
It was probably about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So an applesauce cake doesn't last for 2 weeks, that kind of heat.
What else did you receive in your packages?
We received one of the nice packages I got was from the company that I work for, Alice Chalmers. They were very, very good to me, and we had various kinds of cheeses and crackers and that sort of thing. And it was an enjoyable thing. We had a party when we got
whenever you got a package.
Yes.
Right? What did you do for recreation, or did you have leave time?
There wasn't much time for recreation in Korea. However, when I did get, even when I was with my unit, we weren't on duty all the time. I mean, we had time off, and it was mostly preparation for inspections and that sort of thing. It was pretty. I do remember we had a young man who played the organ very well, and we at night would go to the chaplain had a field organ, which was a very well. You could move it around as he had to do, and it was always in the tent next to the chaplain's tent. And we would go in there, and this kid would play the organ, and we'd sing all kinds of songs, you know. And it was very, very amusing and entertaining, and we had a great time. He was probably not the greatest organist in the world, but it served the purpose. Yeah. Yes. And when we were in the radio school, we had what we called a houseboy. And this little guy was probably 10 or 12 years old, and everybody was Kim. You know, that was their name. And this kid was very, very intelligent.
He was from Korea?
He was a little Korean kid. I think his family lived in Busan, and here we were halfway up the, through South Korea. And he was paid and probably was the greatest salary winner in the whole family. And he would send his money back to his family. But he would play blackjack with the guys. And he was sharp enough that he turned out the winner most of the time. At 12 years old, he was a genius. That was all there is to it. I often wonder now, what happened to Kim? He would be a man of 65 years old now, and I can't see him as an adult. I see him as a little 12, 13, 14-year-old kid that took care of getting water for us and taking our laundry to the village to get it done, and that sort of thing. He's a great kid.
How far were you from the village?
Usually not very far, probably just over the hill. It wasn't very far from the village.
Did you get to travel into the village? I mean,
well, there were some villages where you would want to go, and I did. But for the most part, the villages weren't the sort of places that you would like to go.
Okay. I didn't know if there was any place to eat or...
No, nothing like that. And any of the food that you saw there, you wouldn't want to even sample. Dried fish that smelled to high heaven,
So you played cards and...
Yes.
You said you guys sang.
Yeah. And we had somebody acquired a harmonica, and there was sort of a competition who could play Silent Night so that we could celebrate at Christmas time. The regimental cooks were very, very good. If you went into the hills, and there were plenty of pheasants there, and you got the pheasants, you could take them to the mess sergeant, and he would prepare them. I never killed a pheasant myself, but there was one situation where I would like to have killed a pheasant. We had in between the combat unit and our unit, we posted a radio, a relay sort of thing. And we tied it up into a tree, and we were able to control it remotely. And over the night, the radio disappeared. And so the next day, I was sent with a radio to replace it and to stand guard over it. So I was sitting there with my M1 in my hand, leaned actually across my lap, leaned up against a tree, and down the path, a pheasant squawked. And I thought, I've had it. So it was a frightful moment. I would like to have shot that pheasant, but I didn't.
What happened to the radio? You don't...
Well, see, there were infiltrators, there were civilians who probably could have sold the radio for, who knows what. Anyway, that's what happened to our radio.
I see. Do you recall, well, you did tell me that the train ride, the day your service ended.
Yeah. After, getting back to the States, of course, we had some time at home after getting back. I can remember going under the Golden Gate Bridge, and there was a small group of people there, but, I think I can safely speak for the other people. We did not consider ourselves heroes. We didn't expect a parade or a large welcoming group, and we had none.
Mhm.
And that was perfectly all right with us. We were anxious to get back home to resume life as it was. Little did we know that that's not going to happen, because we were gone, life went on here at home when we were gone. And so we couldn't come back to the same situation that we had before. In many cases, it was a sad situation. In other cases, it was a tremendous improvement over what we left. I know that for my part, having the GI Bill was a godsend for me. It changed my life completely. I was able to go to school that I had wanted to do earlier but wasn't able to afford it, coming
Mhm.
from a family of that many kids.
Mhm.
And so through the GI Bill, my life was absolutely changed completely.
And where did you go to school?
Uh, my kids are always embarrassed by this, but I went to so many schools. I started at what was then Springfield Junior College, now is Benedictine University.
Okay.
And after that, I went to the University of the Americas in Mexico City. After that, I came back and went to Illinois State University and got my bachelor's degree. Summers, I would go back to the University of the Americas. I had some courses through the University of San Francisco, and I came back then, and after teaching a few years, I got my master's at the University of Illinois.
So you were a teacher.
Yes, I taught for as near as I can count up 40 years. After I retired, I went back to teaching 9 different times because of the shortage of Spanish teachers.
Mm-hmm.
My last teaching experience was year before last. I didn't teach last year. Things in the teaching profession have changed.
Yes, I can imagine. How did your military experiences affect your life?
Well, as I've mentioned before, going to school made it possible for me to do, to qualify to teach.
Mhm.
And those were tremendously pleasing years. They were pleasant. I enjoyed being in the classroom with the kids. And under the right circumstances, I'd go back again today.
Mhm.
But it completely changed my life. Here, although the company that I worked for treated me tremendously, they would let me go, give me a leave of absence to go, and then in the summer after I got through school, I could go back and resume the job that I had before. And when I was at my first 2 years, I worked full time. I went to school full time. I went to school during the day, and I was on the night shift, and they were very, very kind to me.
Yes.
And then, summers when everything was going right, they would hire me back, and I would get my old job back.
Mhm.
I some people may have had difficulty being reemployed when they got home. I didn't have that problem. It was kind of sad to break ties with the company. Now the company has been sold and that sort of thing, and it was the right thing to do. But the summer that I graduated from Illinois State, I had not planned to go into teaching. I was going to go back to the accounting department where I worked before, but it was at a slow time, and so they said, if you just wait a little while, we'll hire you back. Well, in the meantime, a superintendent called me from Fox Lake, Illinois, and he was desperate for a Spanish teacher, and he made me such a deal that I couldn't pass it up. I thought, oh, am I going to sign away 9 months of my life for sure? To sign this contract, but it was not a mistake. Turned out to be a very, very enjoyable career.
Is there anything else that you would like to add? Do you have any more memories you would like to share? Any good or bad?
No. Oh, really, we forget those bad things that happen to us.
Mhm.
We like to dwell on the good things,
Mhm.
and you know, well, there were some situations that were hilarious, but not to be put. You're not fit to be put on tape. But
I'm okay with it.
yeah. But no, knowing the people that I met, they were, great guys.
Mhm.
And I was really surprised that today I didn't run onto some of those guys. I would have thought that they would have been here, especially
Mhm.
since we all left from Sangamon County.
Mhm.
But anyway, yes, one of my really close friends was a little kid from here in Springfield. And after you were in Korea a number of months, you were eligible to go to Japan on R&R. And he went to Japan on R&R, and he was killed in Japan. Supposedly, he was on a canoe ride and drowned, but we have our doubts.
Mhm.
And I often wish that I had been with him,
Mhm.
and maybe could
It wouldn't
have
have
prevented that from happening.
Mhm.
And that's really kind of a low point in my memories as far as those things are concerned.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes, as I mentioned before, those places where you were put in really precarious situations meant nothing to you at the time. Nothing can get the best of me.
Mhm.
I can survive whatever.
Mhm.
And when I think back on it now, some of those things are really very scary. And, some of these people come back with hang-ups. Strangely enough, my strongest hang-up is when I take a shower and there's a breeze coming through the window and it's cold. I think of those times when we showered in freezing conditions in Korea, and then all these things come back to mind, like seeing bodies stacked like cordwood and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And they're not pleasant memories. And that's the only hang up I have. I think.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm normal, I don't know. Look,
Well,
I can't think of anything else I need to
okay.
tell you.
Okay. Well, that will conclude our interview then.
Yes.
I thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming here today and letting me record your story. It's been my privilege. Thank you for your service
Okay.
to our country.
Certainly welcome. It was no more than I should have done.